Hello, everybody. We are starting in a moment. Okay, let's get started. Hi, my name is Carl Barham. I'm with Transworld Business Advisors, and I am honored to offer this web discussion on how to help your business survive and thrive. It's part of our Small Business Survive to Thrive series, presented by the GrowthXperts, a local group of business advisors that help support small business owners, especially during this time of the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, we're going to talk about cash flow. And before we get to that, and our presenter, David Wood with B2B CFO, I want to just do a quick introduction with the other members of the team so that you know who we are, and then we'll let David get right into it. Betsy, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'd be happy to. Good morning, I'm Betsy Corley-Pickren, and I am a professional certified coach. I work with people on leadership development, particularly small business owners and key people. I also work with people on leadership skills, coaching skills, and matching the right person to the right job. And I'm thrilled to be part of this group of growth experts. Thank you.
Excellent. And again, I'm Carl Barham, Transworld Business Advisors. I help business owners understand the value of their business, how to improve the value of their business, how to effectively market, sell, or acquire another business. And right now, our whole organization is focused on helping all the small business owners not only make it through this pandemic, but also set themselves up for success as this will pass. And we're here to help the local business community do that. Our fourth member is Stephen Gu, and I'd like Stephen to introduce himself and what he does as part of the group.
What I do is I'm a CPA, I'm a tax attorney. What I do is helping clients do tax plannings and helps them navigate. Right now, we are helping them to try to get all the funding, the resource from the CARES Act, and that really helps them to go through this financial crisis.
Thanks, Stephen. Last but not least is David Wood, a partner of B2B CFO. And for those that may not understand the difference between a CFO and accounting, think of a person that could help you understand the cash flow of your business and look forward to identify your cash needs, profitability, different sources of funding to help you be that strategic partner in thinking about your business from through the financing of it, whether you need investment, funding through loans, managing your cash flow, putting in those right systems. So I'd like to let David introduce himself and kick off today's discussion around how to manage your cash flow in the business. Some of the things you need to do right away as you prepare to apply for loans, as well as manage over the next 60 to 90 days as the economy and the rest of the world is grappling with the impact of the coronavirus and COVID-19. David?
Good morning, and thank you, Carl. As Carl said, I'm David Wood. I'm a partner with B2B CFO. We work with small to medium-sized business owners. I guess owners of small to medium-sized businesses. In normal times, we help them plan through and forecast out what their future is. I like to tell people I help them develop their blue line for their business GPS and keep them on that line so that at the end of the year they know where they're going to be and they get there. But today we're going to go over what can you do right now during these unprecedented times. Nobody has been through something like this before, but there are certain steps and best practices that I believe that we'll be talking about today that can certainly help you weather the storm. So with that, I'm going to get into my presentation. And again, we are GrowthXperts, and we are putting on a series of Small Business Survive to Thrive series, series of small presentations to help you manage the crisis better. So today we're going to talk about crisis cash flow analysis and what you can do in a short period of time to help manage some of the opportunities and also help manage your business get through these tumultuous times. So, you know, we're all worried about it, and we need to be prepared. Everybody needs to think about how and what survival looks like for you and your company, and what can you do to survive this. We do have some businesses out there that are thriving right now. If you make sanitary gowns or in the healthcare industry or something along those lines, if you make, you've got a company that makes respirators, you're going to be able to find a pivot on how you're doing business revenue-wise, and this is a chance for you to thrive. We also have other businesses that are completely decimated, that really don't have any pivot points. I've recently talked to a potential client that had a nail salon, and there's not much options there. There's not much pivot points that they can do in order to keep their business going, even at a minimal. So depending on what type of business that you have or are involved with, you may be thriving at this point in a few situations, but most of us are feeling the pain and really feeling the pinch. But we all need to be prepared for what our businesses are doing, what's our market segment doing, you know, what's our industry across the country doing? Is it shrinking? Is it being decimated? Is it thriving? And plan accordingly. So I'm going to concentrate more on the companies right now that are able to pivot some. They're keeping their doors open, and they're trying to weather the storm. Hopefully the storm will begin to get out of it, depending on who you listen to. It may be another 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks. And we need to consider each of these time periods as business owners and have a plan for each one. So that's who I'm going to focus mostly on today is those businesses that are able to still have some sort of revenue generation, but are obviously affected and are not in those small group of businesses that are thriving right now. So in any business, but especially in these, cash is king. And this couldn't be any more true than what it is right now. And you need to have cash to be able to survive over the next couple of weeks or months. And we're going to talk about, most of our presentation today is going to be evolved about how to preserve your cash and make it the most important asset that you have. So one thing I say is, you know, you got to protect your liquidity. You got to hold on to your cash. And a few of the examples I'm going to throw out there today is for companies that already have a line of credit in place, today's the time to use that line of credit. Utilize it, but be smart with it. But it is a source of cash for you, and most businesses are going to be better off having cash on hand. I'm not suggesting that you go maximize your line of credit and put all the cash in the bank. We are not seeing that kind of stress on our financial systems yet, but know that your line of credit is out there and plan to use it wisely. New hires should only be hired for essential positions. This is not the time in most companies where you're trying to grow. If someone does leave naturally, which probably is going to be rare in these next couple of months, but don't feel like you need to rehire them, except for maybe if you're trying to hit some of the provisions of the SBA loan, the payroll protection has some clauses in there for forgiveness that are based on the amount of employees that you have and are required to maintain. But this is not the time to try to, all right, let's hire somebody new in this position, You're trying to be really smart with your cash. I'll also tell my clients no major purchases at this time. This is not the time to go out and buy new machinery or equipment, new vehicles. This is not the time to spend cash unless it's absolutely necessary. I'm going to move on. Next I want to talk about is your accounts receivable. This is a time to pay more attention to your accounts receivable than before. Do everything you can to accelerate those accounts receivable. Obviously, you're going to be struggling and are going to be tight with money. So are your customers. So put some simple best practices in place. You should be invoicing immediately as soon as you provide services or ship the product. This can be daily. I also suggest that you send these invoices electronically. There still are some companies out there that send them by regular mail, but this is an opportunity for you to enhance your method of sending invoices. And as long as your customers are willing to accept them electronically, most of them are. This is a time to do that. It just anything that you can do, any process or best practices that you can implement that squeezes a day or two out of your collection cycle is going to be very important now to get the cash that people owe you in your bank in your hands. Because the longer we wait and the longer this that we go through this period, people are going to become tighter and tighter with their cash. So get as much.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Carl.
So since a lot of businesses are struggling, what if you have customers, clients that notify you that they're not able to pay? What do you recommend people do in those cases?
First, and by them contacting you, hopefully that you're communicating. So you need to communicate with that customer. You need to understand their situation. You need to try to work out some sort of payment plan with them is a good option, but try to understand their needs. There's not a one answer that fits all there. Maybe if they're waiting on getting paid, but you need to not sit back and you need to be proactive. It's not a reactionary position you want to be in. So, but the communication is the key. And you'll see that throughout several of my slides today, that's the most important thing, and to understand their situation. Hopefully that answers your question. Very good.
One follow-up to that question. Do you recommend in cases like that you change your payment terms in the short run? So if clients come in and want where you might have extended 30-day payment terms or others, do you recommend in this period that they request cash up front for services or product provided?
Yes, and actually I didn't have that point down on my slide, but I did have it as a talking point. Not only that, but anytime you can get a retainer amount down, or anytime that you can get at least 50% deposit down. For those that are selling goods, you want to that deposit, try to cover most of your costs and leave your profit piece. Let's say you're selling something for $100 and it costs you $50 and you're going to make 50% gross margin on it. Try to at least get that $50 in up front to cover your product cost. But yes, if you're providing services, try to get maybe work either on an upfront paid retainer, or have some sort of deposit down as well on that. And then as you said, as long as you can get cash up front or shorten your payment terms, that would be a good idea as well.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from this is you might be able, for a period of time, notify your customers that your payment terms have changed and that you may request a deposit or full payment in full for services or product rendered until things return to normal. That at least protects your cash position in the short term, and people that really need your service can still get it. You can make a business decision whether or not you want to extend terms to strategic or key clients or customers.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And this is something in general that you want to do, and I work with my clients on, is putting in best practices. I have down here actively manage your AR reports. And back to the deposits and some of your retainage and getting paid up front, that's always, even in good times, going to be, as long as it's industry allows for you to do that. Certainly cash flow is always king, but it's even more so now. It's more important than ever that you try to implement some of these best practices. So anyhow, when I say actively manage your AR report, you need to have a process in place. When somebody gets to 30 days, this happens. When somebody gets to 45 days, this happens. And every industry is different, but some of those items that would kick in are you make a phone call, you communicate. Again, communicate with those vendors that have not paid you, that look like they're not going to be able to pay you. The more knowledge you have through communication, the better business decisions you're going to be able to make. And then the last thing I have down here is encourage electronic payments. I don't see that any of our mail delivery services are going to be slowing down, but we really need to get into this century and not sending invoices and payments in the mail. And you see that more and more, but there's still some industries out there that, you'll write a check and put it in the mail. And now's the time to encourage your customers to use the electronic payments. With that, I want to move on to the next slide. And that's the other half of your cash flow, is you manage your accounts payable. So these are your costs and your expenses that you're going to be paying. So what you want to do at this time is you may be one of those businesses that have enjoyed good cash flow, but now's the time to manage it even a little bit tighter. You want to pay within your contractual payment terms. You don't need to pay any faster than that, but you want to, as best you can, if you have the cash and you bring in some cash in through revenues, you do want to keep up with your payments, and you don't want to be the vendor out there that is slow paying or paying in 60 or 90 days. Sometimes it's not avoidable, but you do want to uphold your contractual liabilities here. You also want to properly manage your payables to make sure you're not avoiding, that you are avoiding any kind of late fees or interest charges. A lot of times companies say, it's only $20 or it's only this a small percentage, but it usually will add up if you don't manage your payables correctly. And now more than ever is not a time to just waste a few dollars here and there on interest charges and late fees. When you do start to experience some cash flow woes and you're not able to pay everything immediately, you need to begin to say, who do I pay first and what is most important? And I work with clients that say, if you don't pay your phone, they can cut that off pretty quickly. But if you have something else that you've ordered and you've already received it, maybe that's something that you can hold off and not pay, and it's not going to interrupt your business. That, of course, is not what any business owner wants to get into, and this is a last resort type of thinking. But if it does come to a time where there's only so many dollars in the account to pay your costs and expenses, you do have to start prioritize and which expenses and costs have immediate benefits to you and which ones the benefits have already been, you've already gained the benefit from that, or which, as I said, which expenses are really volatile if they get cut off and which ones can be expended out. And then for those that you're having trouble paying, I also think it's important, if that's the case, that you communicate. That's a key word again. You communicate with your vendor and let them know what's going on. And I've done this a couple times back to the nail salon that I gave some advice to, that they were going to shut down. They said, well, what about rent? And I said, go contact your landlord. This was a couple weeks ago, and the landlord was able to say, you know what, they came out with, they paid a portion of his rent for the next 3 months, and then hopefully when things get back to a more normal world, they made a plan to where he could absorb that deferred rent into his next rent payments. So a lot of times, if you're proactive and you contact your vendor or your landlord or whoever it is, and let them know ahead of time, typically you're going to be better off, with higher chances they're going to work with you and be able to work out a plan. My next area of concern
David,
with my...
Could I ask a question, please?
Yes, ma'am, Betsy.
So what tips do you have on how to negotiate extended terms? Where do you start?
You start with picking up the phone and talking to somebody is the way I like to do it. Certainly emails can work as well. My approach is to be more honest and let them know what you're able to do. Also, it's good if, and it's a guess right now, but let's say 90 days, this nail salon, I'm going to throw that example back out. In 90 days, we're going to be back open and we're going to have some business. So work out a plan, and this is going to get into a little bit of our cash flow presentation as well, Betsy, but have a plan in mind to start the negotiating point. And
Okay,
I find that a lot of times,
go in with a plan, and know that might just be a starting point. Is that what you're saying?
right. So as this guy with the nail salon did, he worked out, he figured out what he could have, how much money he had in the bank, gave himself 3 months and came up with a plan that said, I'm going to approach my landlord this. Would you be able to do this? And the landlord basically said yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, David, I have a question. So you mentioned you're talking about the just-in-time logistic. I have lots of e-commerce clients. They have to balance, and I wonder, do you have any thoughts how to balance the just-in-time or how much inventory they have to carry? Because right now, the whole logistic chain has been disrupted. So lots of my clients, they actually run out of inventory because the logistic, people stopped, working in the warehouse, or they simply cannot get enough supplier from overseas. Or basically, there's for Amazon, they kick off lots of listings. They only allow the essential listings. So I don't know do you have any thoughts on that? How to balance?
Yes, I did. I'm going to go ahead and flip to the slide while I'm answering that question, Stephen. Very good question. So again, I'm going to go back to that word communication. You need to know your suppliers. You need to know, are they going to be in business? Talk to them to understand what their business is going through at these times. We're all struggling in some way or another. And now's the time, as I keep saying, is communicate. And if you understand your supply lines and you understand your suppliers, then you know that my last comment here is communicate with suppliers to identify delivery disruptions and delays. Are there going to be any? This is not necessarily a time to go back and renegotiate, although that's always an opportunity for better prices. But what you really want to do is not interrupt your supply chain, but you want to reduce your inventory costs as low as possible at this time. That's always a good business practice, but especially now, managing your inventory level. Do you really need all of those different SKUs? Do you really need that item in all 18 colors in your inventory. And you need to make some decisions right now on doing that. And implement this just-in-time supply chains management. You know, for example, I've got a landscaper that's still out there mowing yards, and we'll see if the stay-at-home ordinance defines him to be an essential business or not. But you know, now's not the time to have all the extra pieces for his blowers just in inventory, just in case he needs one. Buy less supplies. You also need to look at, we're going to talk in a minute about doing some projections and cash flow projections, but we're going to go through some scenarios where you have reduced levels of sales. And you need to adjust your inventory and what you have in inventory based on what you believe your sales levels are going to be. If you were selling at $100,000 a month and you needed X amount of inventory to be able to support that, and you're at $50,000 a month in sales now, you theoretically need half the inventory that you usually carry. And a lot of times you can go in there, if you review and you really look at your inventory items, you can cut that back even more. A lot of my clients, they see how much they have in inventory on their balance sheet, but they don't use that as a management tool. And keeping a lot of inventory, you'd rather have cash at this time and what we're going through. But Stephen was exactly right on his question that you also have to give a lot of consideration to what your supply chain is doing and manage your supply chain. So I think, inventory is a place where, again, spend as little bit of cash as you have to. You definitely need to have some inventory around, but I think you're going to find some savings in your inventory management as well. Cash savings, that is. So I keep talking about developing a cash management plan, and that should always be important to a business owner, but even more so today. And we don't know if this is going to affect us. Now we pretty much do know that it's through the end of April at a minimum. So that's going to be another 4 weeks. A lot of experts are saying it's going to be to the end of May. So we're looking at 8 to 9 weeks. What if it's at the end of June? So you're looking at 90 days. So my advice is to prepare a 90-day cash flow projection that is very detailed, and you need to be projecting this on a weekly basis over those 90 days. And what this plan will have is as much as you can go out, which start with your current receivables and payables. Try to align those that you can pay certain items when certain items are received. You'll put in some more of your fixed expenditures, such as your payrolls. There's a lot of times, insurance is a big expenditure. There's a lump sum done during the year and then smaller payments throughout. You need to project out all of these known cash flows, expenses on your projection. And this is a time to get granular. This is a time to look at each individual item and have it on your cash flow projection. And once you come up with this, we'll develop scenarios based on multiple decreased sales levels. At this point, you've got to project out, and you need to see the results of those projections. Are your sales going to be cut by 30%, 50%, 80%? And under each of these scenarios, you need to analyze your working capital and your cash flow risks. You need to be able to plan out using the model, and you will keep up. I suggest that this is being kept up with almost on a daily basis, if not every couple of days, but you need to look at this week by week and plan out your cash flows when you're getting money in and what you're able to pay for. And unfortunately, during these times, you're probably also going to have to defer some payments to certain vendors, and you need to know which ones you can defer and which ones you can't. You cannot defer payroll. You cannot defer some of your utility bills unless we get some relief from the government on rent and utilities, but you can't. There's certain expenses that you can do without, but there's certain expenses that you can't. You just have to find a way to pay them, and you need to prioritize all your expenses and all your cash flows based on these different levels of projected revenues and how much revenue you're going to lose. In looking at these different scenarios, it's going to be important to understand where your break-even points are. How much money do you need to keep your business up and going? And if you look at your sales and they decrease by 50% or 80%, there's at some point when it may make sense that you need to shut your doors. It's a business decision, and it goes much more beyond cash flow. There's some other things that I know that are tied up in the SBA loans that are coming out. But you need to understand where your break-even points are for each level of sales and adjust to those. And this is not a prepare at one time 90-day cash flow. This is a living document that you're going to be working with, as I said, pretty much on a daily basis. You're also going to have trigger points that you're going to build in there, that if my revenues go below this level, it may make some you need to predetermine where you can cut some expenses. So
David, question.
Yes, Carl.
So if you've never done a cash flow statement for your small business, where do you recommend people start figuring out how to do this or get tools or templates to do that?
If this is something that you want to, I'll be glad to have a conversation with you to start with. It's probably good to have some sort of professional help you. If you do decide this is something you can do yourself, a good starting point is with your current receivables and your current payables listing out of your accounting system. But you need to go through your income statement and understand where your cash flows are going to be line item by line item.
No, a different question that I'm asking. So
Okay.
if people use something like QuickBooks, is there a function in some of these financial software where they can do a cash flow report to understand and then do projections? Or is this something they can also work with their accounting or other professionals to be able to help them put together the template or the draft that they can then manage?
Yes, this is typically an Excel function, is a better place to do that. Most of them, I'll start off with QuickBooks and other accounting softwares, and there's add-on packages that will do projections based on your activity in QuickBooks. I do not recommend those at this point for this exercise, one, because they'll do it on a monthly rather than a weekly basis, and two, they're going to use logarithms of what your history is, and right now history is not going to be a good determining factor of what the next 90 days are going to look like in this country. So this is something that needs a little bit more input than something that a logarithm would be able to generate directly from your accounting system. So I don't think there's any shortcuts here, Carl. How I would help my client is to start with QuickBooks with some downloads into Excel, build an Excel schedule with cash flow projections, and I do this with several of my clients on an ongoing basis.
So hold on, let me make sure that if I can get what you said. So you can export from various types of accounting software to Excel, some of the data, but then reformat that or analyze and process it into weekly buckets of revenues and expenses to determine the cash flow. But the key thing that I'm hearing you say is projecting forward is what's most critical with reasonable assumptions on what you think the revenue level is going to be, and then make adjustments week to week as you learn more information and track that on Excel.
That's exactly right, Carl. And also I wanted to just clarify that revenues and receipts are not the same thing. You may generate revenue today but not get paid for 30 days. So you need to adjust that in your cash flow schedule. Expenses are not the same thing as expenditures. So when you expense something today on a financial statement, you may not pay for it until next month. You may have paid for it 2 months ago, and it's a prepaid item. So you need to be able to adjust your pure financial statement, your income statement, profit loss statement, whatever you want to call it. You need to adjust that into a pure cash flow statement. And so we're talking about cash here. You can be profitable, but if you don't collect your money, you're going to have issues with cash flow.
So that's the key thing that I think you're pointing out on this particular topic is the knowledge and experience to generate a cash flow statement. If you already have it, you know what to do. Download the data, start process. If you don't have that experience in converting incomes and income statements into cash flow statements, getting someone to help you with that is probably your best thing to do because you don't want to learn this on the fly while you're in the middle of a crisis.
That's exactly right. And this is also something that a professional could come in and help you set up and train somebody depending on the level of your willingness to work with numbers. And it's not really accounting, but it's forecasting out. Some people get Excel and pick up on that type of forecasting. Some people struggle with picking up on that, but it's essential that if you don't feel like you understand it, that this is, of course, I'm going to say this because I deal with this with a lot of my clients, but this is a key area where money is well spent to get a professional to give you some advice on how to get this up and going.
There's one last point on this one I do before we talk about one more thing, if you have a moment. I think the key thing of this cash flow analysis is not only could it help you through a crisis or a short period of time, putting the system in place after this passes will help give you more detailed understanding of what your business is doing, where your operating cash flow is, so that you can make good decisions on how to and when you're going to have cash flow problems before it happens. Because in this case, no one may have predicted that this was going to happen, but having this tool already would have positioned a lot of business owners to be able to determine what their funding need is. So maybe you could talk about, once this is done, what are your options for getting any cash flow shortages, getting funding for that?
Well, you got your crystal ball going because I'll flip to my next slide. But before I do that, a point you hit on is using this when times get back to normal. And a weekly cash flow, a lot of my clients do use it. There's some that don't, but most of them do. And you need to manage and make business decisions both on your cash flow projections and on your income statement. And as I mentioned a few years ago, they're not necessarily, yes, they go hand in hand, but they're not exactly the same. And you need to, a business owner, understand what each of them, how they differ, and what each of them shows you, and how you should manage from each of those. So if you do need cash, I did want to point out, and especially since today is opening day for the second item down there, the Payroll Protection Program, there's a lot of information on the news, but the government, through the Small Business Administration, has they've provided $10 billion under the EIDL loans, which is the Economic Injury Relief Act loans, and that is a loan that people can borrow, and I'm going to not go into that because that's another discussion that we'll have on another day in our series, but I do want to make sure you know that there are some SBA options out there to get financing. The payroll protection loan, which is under the CARES Act, the government has given allotted $349 billion towards this program. And it is set up with the intent to put money in owners' pockets so that they can keep people employed. And these loans are designed where the majority, if not all of it, is going to be forgiven. So the term free money comes out, but that's what this loan is meant to do. That was Congress's intent, was to put money into employees' pockets so they can continue to pay their rent, their utilities, and buy groceries. So that loan gets started today. I also want to caution small business owners out there that there's the Small Business Administration has come out and said they would like to start funding in 2 to 3 weeks. I have yet to hear an expert say that is even remotely possible. So I think we're looking at a timeline more in 4 to 7 weeks would be that would be a pretty aggressive timeline as well. But there's special emphasis that the SBA get this money out and into small business owners' pockets as soon as we can, to get it into the employee pockets. So we'll see if the SBA is going to be able to administer all the demand. And that's not a slight against the SBA. It's just that we've got 50 million small businesses that are going to be applying for this loan. And I just don't know if the SBA has the resources to be able to handle it. I personally project out today is going to be, we're going to hear on the news tonight how the SBA servers crashed. I hope I'm not a prophet here, but that's what I'm kind of anticipating today being. There's changes in the guidance that has been given. There's a phone call with the Small Business Administration with all the SBA lenders today, and hopefully a lot of guidance will come out in that loan. But just for an example, the interest rate has changed twice already this week of what they're going to have on these loans. So this may or may not be a savior for small businesses, but I am not advising any of my clients to say, okay, I'm going to have this money next week or the week after. I just don't think it's going to be that fast of a turnaround. I also want to point out the third thing that through the SBA that the government has given through the CARES Act is there's loan payment relief. The government will pay for your debt service on small business loans that are already existing, both the 7A and the 504 loans, that they will make payments for you, not complete forgiveness, not deferrals, but payments for you for the next 6 months. So that is something that's not hitting the news as much as the payment protection program is. But hopefully these loan programs will come in place and they will offer some aid and relief to small business owners.
Carl, do we have a few minutes? Because this is a hot topic. Do we have like 1 or 2 minutes to discuss this one?
Yeah, we sure do. Go ahead, Stephen.
Okay. So, David, I just wanted to, so this is obvious and it's crazy, you know, we are monitoring this every day and everybody's so worried now. I worked until midnight last night. I know some community banks, they start to accept the application now as of today, April the 3rd. And I just received the email. I also got information from other resources, the Bank of America, Chase, and Wells Fargo. They said they are not ready. They extended to Monday. So, no, have you ever had a source like between, because this is, I feel like this is not for, it sounds like it's free money, but this actually is not for everyone. I don't know if you have any source like compare like economic injury law, because a lot of people want to go apply, and PPP, of course, all the people want to go apply. But if you really, I have some clients, you know, they really have to run a calculation. They have to decide between the PPP loan, or they just go ahead and apply for the unemployment benefit. Because keep in mind, the PPP loan, they can only, they only have 2 months, right? And for some like, tip workers, they might feel like the money they get from the unemployment benefit is more than the PPP.
Yeah.
It's just monthly times 2.5, right? But
Right.
for the unemployment benefit, you got it from state, and you also got it from federal for extra $600. So I have clients that they run some calculation, and it's better off just have their employee that claim the unemployment benefit.
Yes, and Stephen, the most generalized way, and I know you're deeply involved in this as well as I am, and Carl, I know that you're paying a lot of attention to this as well, specifically with our clients. So Congress has passed this law, and they have good intentions, and I actually like the way some of these programs are set up. And where we are right now, they've taken the laws and they've asked the lawyers for the SBA to make forms, to come up with interest rates, to figure out some of the minute details. And I think that's where we're kind of stuck now, as Stephen just pointed out. Yes, there is some, it seems like there's going to be some advantages to go ahead and claim unemployment. Ask your employer to fire you with cause, so you can go claim unemployment and then get your state unemployment plus the $600 additional dollars, especially for lower level employees that may be making $12 to $15 an hour. I've seen some calculations and been in some discussions there where it is more advantageous to go the unemployment route than it is to go with the payroll protection program.
Right.
Even if you assume that you're going to get 100% forgiveness of that loan, it still may be advantageous to the individuals to claim unemployment and collect the extra $600. I've actually heard there was one calculation that I heard about where you let your employees go and they claim unemployment, and under your state unemployment laws, you're allowed to make some amount of revenue but still claim unemployment. And this is not, I'm familiar with all these laws, but everything's moving so quick that there's a lot to be changes. But under this one scenario where you could hire somebody back at right under the threshold level of being able to claim unemployment on the state, plus you get your $600 on top of that, and that was even the best way to go. Now, I think what we're going to find is we're going to see these committees and the SBA and the Treasury Department start to define some of these loopholes and find a way to close the loopholes. My feeling is that Congress's intent with all of the stimulation coming from the SBA and through the Treasury Department is to get money in people's pockets, individuals' pockets, the employees' pockets, so that they can exist, so they can buy groceries, so they can keep their utilities paid. Yeah. And I don't think the unemployment route is how they envisioned it. I think they're going to want people to stay employed, because that also brings into health insurance into the equation. But that's the focus of our government right now with these acts, is to try to keep everything together as it was, so that when we do pull out of this in 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 10 weeks, that it'll be easier for us to get back to a normal routine of where we were a month ago. And if you go the unemployment route and people are being laid off, then in the long run, that's not where you want to be. If we are stretched out for 6 months with this stay at home, and the virus continues to affect our lives for that long, then unemployment I don't think that's going to be where you want to be. I think it's, also feel like, and I heard the Treasury Secretary Mnuchin came up last night and said if the $349 billion does not cover all the small business loans through the payroll protection program, he says our government will find more money to completely fund everybody. Now that could be politicians talk, but I think that's the intent what the government's trying to do. So to answer your question, Stephen, yeah, I think there's loopholes out there. And I think you'll agree with me that they're going to try to close most of those loopholes. It's just awfully hard to write a law this quickly, this widespread, and not have loopholes come up. And as they do come up, I think they will address them and lead us back to where they want everybody to still remain employed. Stephen, do you have anything else you want to add on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think this is fun time. Well, I want to say fun. I mean, it's challenging time for everybody, but for in a profession like you, me, and Carl, I think this is kind of fun because things change every 2 hours, right? And I was literally like, think about it. We have been talking about this for almost 2 weeks now, and we talk since Senators bill and the Congress and all these. I mean, things just crazy. And just last night we because there's one condition, there's one provision that's so confusing, like is a contract 1099 contract. Will that be included in the PPP or not, right? It's so confusing. If you look at the language, could it be or could it not? And then like yesterday, we finally see called an interim final reg. It's not even final, it's an interim final reg from the Treasury Department. Now they clearly that, it's not included, right? And now if you look at I'm looking at the BOA, Bank of America application, they still request the 1099 payouts. And even in the lender's form, they still have that language. So this is just crazy. I mean, I want to see probably all the bank website will crash probably Monday again.
Yeah, and that's what I said. I expect the SBA administration server and website to go down today. I just don't see how. And it's great that the politicians say yes, we have the SBA, they can go do it, But I really think that they're going to struggle being able to maintain the demand and keep up with the demand on it. And Stephen, you're exactly right. Yeah, they took the 1099 provision out of what's your average monthly payroll cost. They changed the interest rate from 0.5% to 1% last night, and on Monday they came out and said it was 4%. So they said 4% in 10 years. Now it's 1% in 2 years. There's a 6-month deferral now. There used to be a 12-month deferral. So this is all liquid, and you know what? It's probably going to have some more changes to it.
I gotta wrap us up now, and I do wanna say one thing. Things are moving quickly. This will pass. The economy is robust, and we have the ability to recover from this. Right now, it's really important to focus on the people that are impacted, health and safety of employees and people. We have to follow these social distancing guidelines. We have to figure out what strategies and tactics we can take to preserve our businesses through this period of time so that we can get back to work and the economy continue to boom. And as these changes happen, we'll continue to bring you updates and clarifications. So couple of things. I want to thank David for walking through those considerations on cash flow in particular that you should be thinking about in your business. Know that you have the tools to be able to do these analysis on yourself using the existing software and Excel and others. If you need help, whether you go through your accountant or find people with the right skills and experience to help you understand your cash flow on a weekly basis, so you know how much funding you will need. And by the way, this is going to be information you're going to need to understand as you apply for these loans. And so we just want to give you a heads up of the task ahead so that you're prepared as you figure out what you need to do for your business. So please do stay tuned. Our next one is on Monday. We're going to talk about putting some of these things we're talking about into a plan. And we're using the term bridge plan. I'll be walking through how to think about your business holistically as you go through this, looking at everything from cash flow all the way through how you can actually thrive and excel in these turbulent times with your business, no matter what your business is. So thank you very much for joining. You could follow us on Facebook, Growth Experts. That's GROWTH Experts, XPERT. Just request to join the group, and you'll be notified when we have these, when we post these videos for you to review and share with others. And if you have questions or you have things that you think might help other business owners, feel free to post those as well. Again, thank you, everybody, and look forward to talking to you again soon. Be safe out there.